SpectreVision Radio.
Welcome to Caribbean Mystics Podcast,
where we marry mysticism, superstition, and lore. I'm your host, Paulina.
And I'm your host, Gabrielle, and we are your resident Caribbean Mystics.
Join us today as we explore the depths of real supernatural stories
told by real people located right in our very own backyard.
My name is Rena. I am from the island of St. Croix, born and raised, from the town of Fredericks Stead, and I grew up in the neighborhood of Campo Rico. Campo Rico was very, very fun. All the neighborhood kids was like family. I'm a Gen X, so I grew up where we all played outside and we were gone all day and back in the house at night. So it was really fun. Everybody knew each other. Everybody was, like I said before, family. And, we took care of each other. We watched out for each other. So it was a very, very nice time to be living. I was 17. I was expecting my first child. I was young. I'm a teenage mom. I got pregnant right after high school. I had my son there in the house in Campo Rico that I grew up. And my mom, very nice mom, big heart. Hey, you're having a little one. Do you think it's time that you try and find yourself a little place? You can go and apply to Section 8 and we have housing here. And she just wanted to see her daughter self-sufficient. So I went, I did all of that. I applied for Section 8, I applied for housing. Then she told me, great uncle, he has some apartments around the place. Maybe you can call him up and see what he have available. So she said his apartments are dated, but they're nice, And plus at the time, my grandmother and my aunts was also living in a house of his. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is a quick way to get into some place to live. And I called him up and he was like, yeah. He said, I can do Section 8 and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. So he said, I might have an apartment for you. And I was like, okay. So maybe about a month or two after I applied for Section 8, they called me and I was approved. I called him up. I told him I was approved. And so we did all the paperwork and stuff to get me in, and I got in. So this is a quadruple house. It has 4 apartments, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. I was on the top right apartment. These apartments is centered right behind the Whim Great House Plantation. There's like a fence, the plantation is in front, and the housing complex was to the back. So, and there was a little slit in the fence that people used to walk through because out front, you could have had the main road, Center Line Road. So that's where I would walk to go catch the bus to go to school. Whim Great House Plantation is the plantation where the slaves were making the sugar cane. There's a little great house, and then there's a windmill, and that's the windmill where the slaves would, I think it was one of those turn-in windmill type things that was there. The windmill itself was stone, so it was off. If you're coming from Center Line Road and I'm walking going home, that Whim Great House Museum was on the right, and the windmill was further on down to the left. So that was an actual sugarcane plantation. So we've always known that. Whim Great House is also where you used to go if you want to do genealogical research. They had like old historic antiques in there. Back then, I'm not sure about now. So that's the little history. It was a sugar plantation. I don't even think at the time those houses that my uncle had built back there, I don't even think those things wasn't even there yet. But other people in the family, when they heard of me, like I have another uncle, my baby uncle, when he heard that I was moving there, and he was like, what? He said, you moving to Uncle place up there in Whim? And I said, yes. He said, be careful. He said, they say that it's haunted over there. So I was like, I've heard stories, but I wasn't thinking anything. I just needed a place to live with my child. 1993, I moved into the home. When I got the keys, all the paperwork was done and I got the keys to the apartment, I was just happy to have somewhere to live. It was humble beginnings for me. I moved in there with just a bed and a cooler. And then my son was 2 years old and his playpen. That was it. The first month or so, very quiet, but it had an eerie feel to it. Yeah, very eerie feel to it. I was just happy to have somewhere to live, and I did it on my own, and I was just happy to have my own place. Something that was very unusual about that apartment, which I think had so much character to it. The wall separating the two bedrooms didn't go all the way to the roof. It stopped midway to the roof. So if I had a bed, I could have take something, put it on the bed, and look over the wall to the other bedroom. And I thought for the time being that was fine, because my 2-year-old would have had that room by himself. So I could jump the wall and look if I wanted to, but I never did. So everything in there was 1960, from the light fixtures to just how the paint was, the bathroom, the floor, everything was 1960s. My great uncle never upgraded anything, but I was happy to just somewhere. 2 to 3 months in, my son used to be waking up in the night a lot. I would get up and check on him to make sure that he was okay. He was just twisting and turning, never really fully waking up, but just like crying out in his sleep. Once he was okay, I would go back to bed. And maybe like I would say minutes later, he's crying again, and at some point it was like a screaming type of cry. So once that happened, I would always go and get him and bring him in the bed with me to sleep. It wasn't every night, but it was more than once a week before it really started moving on to other little things that was happening, and I didn't notice that what it was. I was in school. Also, I was going UVI for nursing. So that's where the second stuff started happening. He was staying with his godmother while I went to school. My mom would come get him while I go to UVI, or would stay with his godmother that lived down the road. So either one of them would keep him while I attend UVI at night. A lot of my classes was at night. And my boyfriend, he used to be getting off work late. So by the time he got off work, I had to be to school before he got off work. While I'm at school, I would buy stuff like little soda, chips and stuff to eat, snacks just to keep me afloat in school. So I would have change. I would come home and I would put change like on the counter. I would stack the change, like, the 10 cent on top, the 5 cent, and I'd go make sure my son eats something and sit him down on the bed or something to watch TV, or he's sleeping already and I put him down and I'll go take my shower. And I would come back out and I notice my change is spread out, like it's not stacked anymore. But I'm still not taking it as nothing. I know how I put it, so I'm just thinking, well, maybe my bag or something knocked the table. I always have an excuse for something, but no, this whatever might change would just be different. One time, I had like 2 quarters, I remember, and I went downstairs, got something, and come back up, and the quarters are stacked, but someplace else, not on the table, it's on the windowsill. And I'm like, I know I ain't put that there. Really, a couple of weeks went by, and then I started noticing like something is messing with my shoes. I would come in the house, take my shoes off at the door. I'll go and do something, come back, and then those shoes I would see inside. Instead of outside by the door, it's inside by the door. Even in my room, I would notice, like, if I take out a pair of shoes to wear, next thing you know, the shoes that I taken out, it's not in the spot that I put it. And I'm like, okay, I know I took the shoes out. I'm blaming it on my son, really, like he's messing with my stuff. And my son, he would just be on the chair sitting down watching TV or whatever. And I noticed that my shoes is back in the closet. At this point, I started befriending the neighbor. We started talking, and then I started asking her little stuff, because by then I'm feeling like something weird going on. And she said, yeah, but I don't let it bother me. She said that. Couple of weeks in, I'm going into my 4th month of being in this apartment. I'm studying for finals, and I could remember one particular night sitting on the table that we had, and I have my nursing book open. It was a big old book, and I put my little book holder in the book, and then I left it. I got tired to go take a shower. And when I come back, it's not on the page that I left it on. My son is sleeping in my bed. My boyfriend came in and out the house real quick, so he's gone. And this was maybe a good half hour after he left. And I'm like, did my son wake up and mess with my book? That incident with my book, I started feeling scared in this house, in this apartment, because I know I didn't leave my bookmarker on the page that it was too when I came back from out the shower. My boyfriend came home and I was talking to him about it. He was like, Rena, we gotta have a jumbio. Something really strange is going on. Few days after that, I went through my finals for nursing. I got through all of that. And then one night, while we both was laying down on the bed watching TV, my son was in the middle of us sleeping. The bedroom door was closed. It was darkness, because the second bedroom where my son was sleeping in, that door was cracked a little bit. We're watching TV, and click, he jumped up and said, Rena, you hear that? I'm looking at him and I said, yeah, I hear that. He said, something down there. And he's getting up off the bed to go check. And I hold him here and I said, no, don't go. I'm afraid. I'm afraid now. I'm like really scared. And he's like, no, I gotta go see. He opened the bedroom door a little bit and peeped. And the lights was out. It was off. But we lay in that bed and we heard click real quick and saw that light flash from the bathroom light through the second bedroom. He said, Rena, he said, we have something in here. Something is definitely in this house. After that night, we didn't hear that click as much anymore. I can't really recall how much weeks later it was, but I do remember school was over. I'm pregnant with my second one, so my belly gained a little bigger. And this one particular day, I came home from my mom's house. I was on the phone speaking with my girlfriend, and my son fell asleep. He's in the bed with me. I hung up from my girlfriend. I must have fallen asleep. I'm thinking this is around no later than maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock. Then I woke up, I turned on the TV, and all of a sudden, I couldn't move. Like, I couldn't move. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? I can't move my hands. I can't move my legs. I can't move nothing. Only my eyes I can move. I can see my son next to me. I'm trying to reach for him. I can't reach for him. But now, at my peripheral, I can see like a shadowy figure coming over the wall. Remember I said that wall don't go up to the roof. It glided very slowly over the wall, like smoke coming over the wall. It was misty. It was, I could see through it, but then it doesn't have like a shape. I'm looking at it coming over me. It was just dark, shadowy. That's it. And I'm looking at it and it's looking at me. And I'm looking at it and I'm trying to move and I'm trying to scream and I can't move. I can't move my legs. It's like I was being pressed. I could just feel heavy, like a heavy presence. I felt really heavy. And I could remember a plane passing. After that plane passed over our head, it's like it disappeared off of me and I was able to move. And I got up, look at my son, and I say, I have to call my mom. And I remember breathing like I'm hyperventilating, because I didn't know what the heck I just saw. But I saw something that wasn't natural. So I called my mom. And I tell my mom what was happening. And I said, Mom, I think I get pressed. Back then, it was people that used to say, you're getting pressed by a jury. I don't know what it was. All I knew is that I couldn't move and I couldn't scream. And only my eyes I couldn't move. And I saw something shadowy and dark over me. I don't know. But my mom said to me, she said, Rena, put on your shoes, get up. Isa was my son's name. She said, I'm taking you to Apothecary Hall. You need to get spirits of turpentine and you need to get British creolin and map that house out. My mom came for me and took me to Apothecary Hall, was closing at 9 o'clock. And she came for me and took me down there and buy those two things. She said, you have to mix these two things together and you have to map your house out. And you need to map it out twice. When we got home from the Apothecary Hall, I was pregnant. So, my mom didn't have me moving nothing. So she helped me move the couch. It was a small apartment, just one couch. She helped me get the bucket and the mop and couple drops of spirits of turpentine. And I had to map out the house. This thing smells awful, but it leaves a very good, squeaky clean shine. British creolin and spirits of turpentine. And they're both repellents. And I guess together they're potent, and it's supposed to repel evil spirits. And it worked. It worked. It worked. Every time I cleaned the house, I would use that to mop. And believe me, after I started doing that, I didn't have any more hauntings. I didn't have any more mischievous activity happening around the apartment. My daughter was born. I didn't move out of that apartment until she was about 2 years old. The elderly, they just know. I think it really stems back to stuff they went through.
Welcome back to Caribbean Mystics. It's Paulina here.
Hey guys, it's Gabby here for another episode.
Oh yeah, and this is probably one of my favorite stories this season. Not because it's spooky, but also because I just really have my heart is out to Rena. She just has this sweet temperament. Her story is super interesting, and there's a lot to kind of talking points that we can get from her one story, from the pregnancy to the babies to living by a historical landmark and the elderly advice, of just how to deal with duppies and jumbies. So there's a lot we're going to dive into in this discussion.
Mm-hmm. I really love that this is a St. Croix story. I just feel like the Crucian lore is deeply rich.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll also say that it's been challenging getting stories out of St. Croix. And so it's nice to start seeing those sprinkle in a little bit more often. You'll find later on in the season, Paulina and I have a couple of really amazing stories out of St. Croix, actually. Um, and I actually think that you guys are going to find those fascinating because it's such a different take on the supernatural and the spiritual. And so, yeah, but this story, as Paulina said, is right next to a historical landmark, the Whim Plantation. And the Whim Plantation actually has like global recognition because it has one of the best intact great houses and plantations in general in the Caribbean. Well, it had, I should say, after the passage of the hurricanes in 2017, there's been a lot of disrepair to the Whim Plantation, which is actually really sad because it's such an architectural marvel and it looks so different than I think any of the other structures I've seen of plantations among the different islands. So I find that to be really sad. But on the island of St. Croix, at one point, there were like over 300 plantations. And so you'll find these sugar mills scattered all around the island. In some places, they are available for visitors and locals alike to be able to visit these sites. But also, you'll find, much to my discomfort, that people will buy land and their land happens to have a sugar mill on it. And, if you own, it's a tricky thing because it's like if you own this land, you may not want people coming on your private property to visit the windmill. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like a gray area with that. But there's so many of these sugar mills all along the island. The estate Whim specifically is a 18th century great house and sugar plantation. And so for it to have survived in such great condition for so long just speaks to the architectural prowess of the enslaved people who built these sites. Um, and right now, well, not right now. Before the hurricanes, the Whim Plantation was a museum, and people could go there and they could check out the different antiques, photos, the plantation tools that they've been able to like keep in really great condition. And then, of course, historical artifacts and the equipment that was used for like sugar processing. And then, as Rena said, there was also a part inside of the museum where people could go and do genealogical research. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I saw on my page that there was someone trying to draw reference to the fact that the Wim Museum continues to be in disrepair after the hurricanes. It's very sad. And the unfortunate part about these old buildings is when they start to lie in disrepair, they get destroyed much quicker, right? Because you have water constantly falling, it's hitting this old wood, it's eroding the inside of like where stone and mortar, sand coral mixtures were like mixed together to put stone together. Continuous exposure, I guess, to like rainfall and stuff tends to just really erode these structures. And so the entire situation is truly sad.
That's unfortunate. But, just to backtrack a little bit, you were saying, like, "I'm so happy we got, like, a Crucian story. They're always so hard to get." But it's funny because, like, the biggest, like, Virgin Island population of listeners are Crucians.
I
So, you need to
know.
be sending some more.
Ugh. I'm just like, come on, Christians, come
Hit
on,
her this
send in
way.
your stories, even if it's an old story you have from your grandmother. Like we
Those are the
love the old
best.
legends,
Yeah,
yeah,
those are
and
the
they're
best.
they're always like so rich.
Mhm.
And then even like according to Rena's story, apparently the elders them have all of the remedies for like spiritual warfare because I had
Yeah,
never heard of spirits of turpentine and British creoline. In
me
fact, we had to
neither.
look up what these bottles look like because we were like, what the hell is this?
I had to ask her to, like, spell some of it because I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I had never heard of it either, and she still has the bottle to this day. So I was like, "Rena, please send me a picture of this." And if you're listening, I recommend, like, checking out our socials or our YouTube or Spotify. You can see some of the pictures.
So she mentioned that she got these from Apothecary Hall. And as fate would have it, about a month ago, I was minding my business and someone tagged me in a post where a lady was talking about Apothecary Hall. And she was like, I have the craziest story from here, but I'm not ready to share it with you. And I thought it was really interesting because the first time I had heard of Apothecary Hall was Rena. And
Mhm.
apparently, Apothecary Hall is also a historical marvel in its own regard. It was a store that has been open since the 1800s.
Wait,
And
what? On St. Croix?
yeah, so it's past the hands of like different owners and stuff. But it was open in the 1800s, the late 1800s. And yeah, established in the early 18th century. So actually in the 1700s.
That's crazy to
Yeah,
me.
it was used to prepare medicines for the Danish military because they were stationed in Christianstead. So if you even notice in Christianstead, they have like the old barracks building and stuff. So this whole like military occupation makes perfect sense.
I'm sorry,
Um,
this is so fast. I can't get over
yeah,
that you found this information because it's so hard to find information sometimes about, like, establishments,
yeah,
especially where we're from, because a lot of, like, those records just aren't out there as easy to find in a Google search.
for
Um,
sure. I
but
agree with
continue.
I agree with you. I was really shocked by it as well. And apparently it was so the apothecary was deemed as a Danish colonial pharmacy museum in the 19th century. And it was recently restored, and the apothecary still holds the original drug jars and pharmaceutical equipment that was used when it was first opened. It even houses artifacts from Indian tribes that inhabited St. Croix for over 3,000 years. The displays could make up things like pottery, axe heads, beads, and ancient canoes. Now, I don't know if, because this article was written like almost 20 years ago, 2009, isn't, imagine that that was 20 years ago. Yeah, that article was written almost 20 years ago. So I'm not entirely sure, but I'm finding another article that says that it was opened actually in 1838. And it's been it was an apothecary in that entire time. And I just find that to be so fascinating. So we actually have a picture of what the sign looks like outside in St. Croix. I don't get the impression that the Apothecary Hall Museum is still open to this day, but perhaps all of the many Crucians that listen can drop some comments to let us know what's actually going on with that building. But I was completely blown away by it.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah,
There's something extra, like, mystical and magical about apothecaries, like, before, like, medicinal Western medicine kinda came through, it's like, "Ah, I need that, like, eyeball of newt or whatever for, like,
That's what
my
it felt
cold,"
like.
right? You walk in there and you see all these, like, glass bottles on the shelves, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, chicken feet," right?
Yeah. It feels like some place where you could go and get like, grounded up eggshell,
Mhm.
like cemetery dirt in a bottle.
Yeah, grave dirt.
Yeah.
Anyways, regardless, it worked for Rena because
It
apparently, like, she
did.
still uses it to clean her floors, and it's been gone.
Yeah, you know what? It actually drove me to do a little bit of research because I wanted to understand. First of all, both of them come from African diasporic traditions such as hoodoo, conjure, and root work. And so this makes perfect sense why you would find these remedies in like a Caribbean community.
Mm.
But spirits of turpentine specifically is a powerful solvent that can cut through negative energy, spiritual filth, and evil influences. It's most notably used for uncrossing and removing hexes, cleansing a space, cleansing objects. So people sometimes will use this to like cleanse their crystals and stuff. And then sometimes people use this for like protective washes, like on their floors and stuff, their windowsills, their door frames, anywhere where energy tends to pass through. Um, I will say that one of the major um disclaimers here is it is very toxic if you take it internally.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say, I'm like, isn't it an actual
yeah,
solvent? Like,
yeah,
for it's, like, for thinning oil-based paints and
yeah,
making varnishes.
yeah, it's like purification. And, it's funny you'd bring that up because British creoline is the same thing. It's another like cleaning agent that you could use.
Mhm.
And then sometimes people will take the spirits of turpentine and they will put it on gree bags. I don't know if you know what a gree bag is, but it's like a conjure
Mm.
bag or a mojo bag.
Got you.
And you
Okay.
can create these little satchels with like herbs, intentions that you've written down on a piece of paper, many
Sounds
little
like
pieces of
medicine
crystal.
bag or, like
Yeah. And they carry that intention. I actually used to carry around a gree bag for abundance. And that, mingalai, these little bags, these conjure bags, they like work well. I will not lie.
careful though if you do happen to dive
Mhm.
into and utilize these ingredients. Also know that, like, careful what you mix with them. You don't want to, like, accidentally create like mustard gas
Correct.
or hurt yourself.
Correct. That actually is a really great that is a really great disclaimer.
Yes.
Don't say the girl done from Caribbean Mystics and you.
Yeah. I mean, there's other things you could use. Florida water is one.
Mhm.
You even use pneumonia to clean your room.
Ammonia.
Ammonia. Yeah. Pneumonia. In
Again,
the
Caribbean
hospital,
Mystics is not giving medical advice.
you've collected some virus and spread it all over your floor.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, like that episode that Gabby told, what was it called? The Roommate. Such a
But
good
yeah.
story. So creepy.
Yeah.
Yes, you cleaned your room with ammonia. And I haven't heard back from some bad
Mhm.
spirits since.
I find it to be really interesting that like what we would use as traditional cleaning agents for physical cleaning are also being repurposed to clean energetically. And I just find that to be one of the many synchronicities between like the physical world and the spirit world because you can always find this kind of overlap.
Hmm, interesting.
Mhm.
So Rena took her mother's advice from the elders in the community and it paid off, I
Mhm.
suppose. One thing that I have to also praise and that really made me love Rena as a mama, fellow mama. I see her and I'm like, when she tells the story, I'm just imagining this like young
Mhm.
mother of a 2-year-old And she's pregnant on top of all dealing with all this mess. And I'm like, props. And then her 2-year-old starting to wake up at the night. But there's a lot of lore around and superstition around babies in the
Mhm.
Caribbean and things that you should and shouldn't do to prevent X, Y, and Z. And
Mhm.
so I kind of went down that road a little bit and I found this really interesting blog from a girl, and it's called like My Jamaican Culture. And she comes from a Jamaican household, but I think she grew up in the States, and she was saying that when she had her baby, like years ago, she told her grandmother about her baby and how he seemed so restless and was spitting up milk often. And the sleep was not going well. And the first thing she asked was like, "Are you having him wear red?" And if you put an open Bible above his head while he was sleeping, and if you started using olive oil on him, all these things. And it made her start to interview the rest of her family. And she came up with this list of baby superstitions in the Caribbean, or more specifically in Jamaica. So I'm going to read you this list because I thought it was really interesting. The first one was that babies should be dressed in something red at all times, such as a tiny red ribbon on the wrist or a bow in the hair, because duppies and spirits will play with a baby who is not wearing red.
Mm.
Uh, Another one is when you're passing babies to someone else, their face should be turned towards the person. If you pass a baby backwards, they will see duppies. When you put babies on your shoulder, they should be held below shoulder level. Duppies will play with babies who are allowed to look behind you. Yeah. You know what's weird
The
about that one?
pressure, oh man, the pressure is on.
Right. But I feel the same way because, like, when parents hold their baby and they're looking over their shoulder, and like you see some movies and there's like that creepy dude that's like,
Mhm.
hey, like waving to like your child, and your innocent baby's like, hello. So I always felt some weird, anxious thought of like, if I put my baby over my shoulder, like, who are they looking at? Like,
Mhm.
so I get it. I can see that one. I'm also paranoid, so who knows? Another one is if you hang babies' clothes on the line, be sure to bring them inside before it gets dark. Parents should take heed, especially if the little one has not been christened as yet, because surprise, surprise, duppies will follow babies around if their clothes are left outside after dark.
Mhm.
Another one is do not cut baby's hair until they have started talking. If their
Yeah, I've
hair
heard
is
that.
cut too early, they will have problems learning to speak. This one as well, I feel intuitively. It feels almost like like cutting a sacred cord. If I cut
Mhm.
my kid's hair too early, I'm like, no, that feels so wrong. Something internally feels like that's just wrong to do. And I know a lot of cultures are the same. They will leave hair grow for a long time. And when it comes time to cut, there's even a cutting ceremony involved in some cultures. All right. Another one is if mom or dad dies, the baby should be passed over the casket. This will cause the parent to recognize them and prevent the ghost from harming the baby. Young children who haven't started talking should not be allowed to eat liver. It will cause the tongue to get heavy and they will have difficulty learning to speak. And also, babies should not be allowed to sleep in a room that has no light. If the room is completely dark, duppies will play with them. Jamaican babies can sometimes be seen with a tiny piece of balled up sewing thread on their forehead. An alternative to this is putting a matchstick, unlit, of course, in the baby's hair, close to the forehead. In this case, the part with the sulfur should be turned outward. This will stop the hiccups. That is an interesting
That's
one.
interesting.
I'm almost done. There's a couple more. So, don't allow babies to look at their own reflection. If you allow them to look in mirrors, they will see duppies. Do not touch or rub the bottom of a baby's feet. It will cause them to start talking late or cause them to not talk at all. You should pray over a bottle of olive oil and use it to anoint the baby. You can even use it to make the signs of the cross on a baby's forehead. The reason, you guessed it, to drive off evil spirits and protect the babies from harm. And the last one, do not allow the baby's navel string, so the umbilical cord, to fall on the ground. As a child grows, he will pee the bed. These are some serious concerns.
I won't lie. I feel like this is like so much pressure. And for those of you who are not familiar with Caribbean lore, just as much as there are all of these like superstitions and do's and not do's for babies, it's the same thing when you're pregnant. Like when you're pregnant, there is a strong belief that you are in something like a unique liminal state, almost like a threshold in between worlds. So they'll say things like, oh, when you're pregnant, you have one foot in the grave, just speaking about how while you are a portal for creation, it acknowledges the very real risks of pregnancy. But also, a pregnant woman is not just one person. Now she's like two souls inhabiting the same body. And this state of transition and duality is often seen in many cultures as very spiritually powerful, which is why some women will experience almost like a spiritual awakening, but it also makes women super vulnerable. And so there are all of these practices that different cultures have, including the Caribbean, about what you should be doing or not doing when you are pregnant. Um, it's believed that the process of creating a new life is seen as a powerful spiritual event. And an unborn child's soul is believed to be freshly arriving from the spirit world, and it hasn't yet anchored into the body. And truly, that anchoring does not happen until a christening happens or a spiritual bath with the intention of anchoring that soul into the body. And so, this open channel for a new soul can, by extension, make the mother a beacon for spirits. And so, that's another reason why women will experience heightened supernatural activity when she's pregnant, because spirits are literally attracted to her. Some people in certain cultures believe that a woman's life force, spiritual energy, is divided when she's pregnant in order to nurture the developing fetus. And so it's perceived that her life force energy that typically keeps her protected is depleted, and her own spiritual defenses aren't as strong, and thus more susceptible to like negative influences, curses, or even the dreaded evil eye. Um, and so pregnancy is a time also of great hormonal and emotional change. This heightened state is often interpreted in spiritual terms as being more receptive to energies, both positive and negative.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Um, the saying of "you have one foot in the grave while you're pregnant" is just awful. Please don't tell a pregnant woman that. They have enough going on. Um, but I digress. Um, One thing that also stood out in this story to me was, okay, so when she put down the first signs of like a haunting, right? She started like putting her change on the
Well,
table
I'm so
and
happy you're talking about this because I was gonna ask you, like, girl, what you had make out of?
well, the change reminded me of the last story we had with the fairy. So I'm like,
Yep.
oh, it could be like a little fairy, but I don't know, money, token, they I feel like that's all spiritual as well. I think of like
Hmm.
the deceased and like ancient times when they used to put coins like for like the Romans, I think, or the Greeks to pay the toll to the fairy toll to pass their soul to the other side. They would put coins on their eyes, and I don't think that necessarily relates to this story in particular, but I also thought it was interesting like the shoe play,
Yeah.
play with those shoes because shoes come up a lot in Caribbean lore. We saw it in another story from our friend from Puerto Rico, Miss Carla, and how when she was in Cuba, experiencing a haunting, one of the remedies that the woman there said was to place your shoes on your bed facing backwards, if I
Hmm.
remember, to kind
Hmm.
of confuse the spirits. And
Yeah.
there's lots of superstitions like that in the Caribbean as well. Like some of them are like, do not leave your leave your shoes outside the door to confuse the duppies because if they follow you home, it confuses them. They won't enter
Hmm.
your home. So you leave your shoes outside or facing a certain direction. Even some cultures are like, don't put new shoes on a buried body, like when you bury the deceased, because it will make them want to travel back to you. It's signaling that. Um, and then apparently, I didn't even know about this, but there is a very popular form of magic in like Afro-Caribbean and Southern traditions that's focused just on the feet or footprints. And it's called like foot track magic. And it's believed to be like one of the most powerful ways to affect someone's spirit. And shoes, being an extension of the foot, could be used in the same way. And if someone gets a hold of your shoes or it's dust, they can cross you up or tie your luck. And I just thought it was really interesting because I never heard of that form of magic before. But again, they believe it's like an extension of the person. And you have those sayings like, take a walk in my shoes.
Mhm.
I think shoes hold a lot of energy. They are like at the base of our body as well. And I think everything kind of travels down to the feet. Footwork as well, when you massage or people doing Reiki. Um, there you even hear like you soaking your feet and you take all that energy out. It comes out through the feet, the base of the body. So
You know what's interesting too is when you think, like I believe you when you speak about that. See, when you look at like the story of the Bible during the Last Supper, one of the things that
mm,
Jesus did was wash the feet of the disciples, which in and of itself speaks about the sanctity of the feet. And then when you look at Caribbean folklore and legend, you see a lot of entities with the backward feet, or they have hoofs for feet, and there's almost like a perversion that happens with the feet, right? Where it's just like in order to be human or non-human, the feet change, and that's a really great indicator. Or sometimes there's entities with no feet at all, which is another indicator that you're dealing with something that's not human.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the part of your spirit that meets the earth.
Mhm.
It's grounding, walking barefoot on grass. You can feel the vibrations and energy of the earth absorbed through your feet. And
Mhm.
so because of that, they're believed to absorb spiritual residue as well, your shoes. And so some people even use it for spell work.
That's why Caribbean people don't leave you walk in their house with shoes.
I don't like wearing shoes in the house either. And
Yeah, no. You're
you
bringing the
tracking,
outside inside.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Ay.
Well, this was like a really fascinating. I feel like we got into some really interesting things. And I'm going to be honest, I love the discussions where I learned so much, like in the research side of things.
Mhm.
And I will say that I went into it actually not knowing much about any of these things.
There's one topic I didn't get to brush on, but
Yeah.
we've talked about it before and it's super common, is the sleep paralysis that she experiences.
Mm-hmm.
She saw it creeping over the edge, which is such a frightening scene, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
When it creeps over the edge at night and she's helpless trying to grab her baby and tap her boyfriend, which, by the way, the boyfriend cracks me up. He's like, "I tell you, man, like, I
Correct.
always knew,
Rena,
like,"
it's time to go.
like, he knew something was up, and she's like, "No, no, no, honey.
I
It's your
hear that.
imagination."
Usually I'm like critical and I'm just like, come on, you waited too long to get out of this very obviously like troubling situation. But like when you think about her circumstances, that lady was going to work, she was going to school, she had a newborn or
Mhm.
a toddler, she was pregnant.
Yes.
Like, ain't nobody try and be like, oh, we got to move on top of that because our house is haunted. Like,
Yes.
she was already overwhelmed.
Oh my
So I could
goodness.
understand her be taking the road of avoidance and be like, no, man, it's okay.
And
Because
when
who
the light
wants to deal with
switch
that?
right, when the light switch was going on, he went to go get it, and she's, like, pulled him back a she's like, "No, don't go."
Yeah, just let it go.
My
uh,
gosh. Some people would be getting up and be like, "I'm going to go investigate." She's like, "Don't do
correct.
it."
No,
Nope,
I'm a
nope.
avoider. Whatever happened in and out of her room is not my business.
You know what I say I didn't know though is that like she was saying that the elders would call sleep paralysis get impressed, like being
Mm,
pressed, which I never heard before. But what's really airy about sleep paralysis, and for those who don't know, it's like a it's a scientific phenomenon. Like it's an actual thing. And I myself have experienced it many times. But every once in a while, people that experience sleep paralysis, which is pretty much your body is still asleep, but your
mhm.
eyes and your conscious are awake. So you can see everything, feel everything, but you cannot move. And to kind of come out of it, it's kind of like Uma Thurman and Kill Bill, like move your big toe, start
Yeah.
wiggling that little part, and it'll all come back. But what's really another phenomenon is that some people will see spirits while they're in this state of sleep paralysis, like Rena did. And a very common factor that's associated with these spirits is a feeling of being pressed and heavy weight. And this is a common theme that has been around for centuries and has spanned several cultures. If you don't know, there's the night hag, which is a generic term for a folklore figure in um, that immobilizes a person if standing and stands on their chest. There's even this really eerie Victorian painting of the hag, the night hag, and I'll feature it in our visuals as well. And in Turkey, the karabasan is a dark pressure or dark assailant. It's a creature believed to attack people in their sleep and press on their chest as they steal their breath. The jatum, which is Arabic, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's another term for sleep paralysis. It literally translates to what sits heavily on something. The
Hmm.
Baktak Persian is a ghost-like creature that sits on the chest, making breathing difficult. And I can go on from the incubus, succubus, pesanta, and more, but all, again, same folklore of this creature, demonic creature that will sit on your chest, steal your breath in a state of sleep paralysis.
Well, that's intense.
So sleep tight, you guys.
Yeah, and Pauline's like, "Okay, bye everybody. See you
Have a
next
good day.
time." Do you have any final theories? My final theory is that I think there were a couple of ghosts in Rena's house. I don't get the impression it was one entity. I feel like her home was a little bit of like a spirit highway.
I don't feel like it was several. I feel like it might have been one. And I only say that because I feel like if it was several, she might have had a harder time getting rid of them than her first try. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think not necessarily. I feel like there are some entities that are just like super curious. They're just like kind of
Mm,
passing through. We saw that in season 1, episode 2, Halloween Guest with Angelica. All she had
yes.
to do was tell the spirit goat and the spirit gone. And so the reason I think that it might be more than one entity is because I feel like when she was telling the story, there was a notable difference in how she felt during each specific event. Like I
Mm,
feel like if it was that malicious, like black misted energy that she had experienced coming over the wall, she would have been feeling that feeling like, oh, something's watching me, something in the house don't feel right. But I feel like when she was describing the shoe thing or she was describing the change thing, I feel like they were just kind of little like trickster things, but it
yeah.
wasn't something that felt like she felt ominous about anything just yet. She just was just like, oh,
Mm,
that's kind of weird. LOL. Like,
true.
and I've seen instances of like that where someone is experiencing a haunting. And I would hypothesize that that happens more times than it just being one spirit, where it's just like a home that has the capacity to have all of this spiritual energy attracts a whole bunch of spirits. And I think some spirits exist in a very like benevolent way where they don't really make any like waves or anything for the people. And then there are other spirits that like enjoy a little bit of tinkering. And then there are spirits that are truly malicious.
Yeah. Just like people.
Yeah.
True. Well, before we send off, I wanted to read one of our fan mail comments.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Um, all right.
Is this
So
recent?
this is recent. This is from
Okay.
a day ago
Oh,
from our last episode. So Janae Gonsalves, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She said, "Love the storytelling on this one." And this one, she's referring to the White Witch of Rose Hall episode, our last episode. And great feedback at the end. Amy from the show The Dead Files did an episode on this location called Guardians of the Dead, Season 5, Episode 1. Oh, I'm going to watch that because I love The Dead Files. Amy is my homegirl. Okay. And it was really interesting to hear what she saw. It ties into what happens when the land becomes soiled from so much tragedy, trauma, and pain. Really great episode, ladies.
Thank you, Janae. I appreciate it. We strive. I'm hoping to have David come on again because he's really such a good storyteller.
Yeah, maybe we should interview him because
I'd love to.
I really liked his content as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think that sums up about today's episode, you guys. And we
This
hope you
was fun.
enjoy your Halloween season.
Yeah. Don't forget,
Samhain.
next week we are coming out on Friday, not Thursday, because we're going to be launching our episode on Halloween Day. And it's pretty incredible. It is a slow burn. I feel like I have to keep saying this. Just listen to the whole episode. It is a slow burn. But when I tell you, that thing had me close to tears when I was recording it with the storyteller.
Okay, okay. I haven't listened to it yet, but get some popcorn. Okay. All right, bye. Thank you for listening to Caribbean Mystics Podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to share with your family and friends. Like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all of our spooky Caribbean content.
Do you have a story you'd like to share that took place in the Caribbean? Email us at caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. That's caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. Or check the show notes for more info.
Caribbean Mystics is created and hosted by Paulina Creaky and Gabrielle Carrard. Theme song is Folktale Juve Rhythm by Umi Marcano.